about the E-mini model, and I suggested that, didn't suggest, I just said these little gold lines on the ES were the trailing stops. After we did the video, market reopened, and like I said, it would stop out if it got right to that yellow line, and boom, there's the exit. So today in the overnight session, like I said, this thing trades all night long, and we could conduct the algo program, and I'll just bring this up to you. We could, and I don't do this, edit strategies just to show you. I can actually change this and optimize when the best time to start. So I could start at like midnight and then say I want to stop at 5 a.m. and then say add minutes to the start time every 5-minute increments, and it'll optimize with TradeStation's technology to find out what the best time to really start between those hours and end. So maybe it's 1:15, maybe it's 1:30, maybe it's 2 in the morning to 4:45, and it'll optimize out. We have other models that do that, but anyway, questions always surface when I open a program, and I'm just trying to be transparent. And every time I open those up, I open apparently a little bit of Pandora's box. People are interested in more. So you will see like a short position given, and it's a red line. And these get nicked in small trade range markets or take small profits because they're constantly trailing stops. So that's what happened last night. So when you get a market that's in a free fall, or when you get a market that's in a rising trend, here's another example where even today, we had a trend trade where the market flipped into a long and it trailed, and then the trailing stop was executed on the next bar. That gold line there, when the market's above it, it stops out on the next open. So that's how that works. The performance was another question. So strategy performance report. Weekly analysis, this is kind of like some of the last 5 weeks. Performance graph, there it is. Pretty substantial on the ES model. That's a day trade. That's what runs in the room. I think I mentioned yesterday that we were short the SPY. The NASDAQ was flat. The NASDAQ went long and actually got out of a trade in today's action. It was very fast and furious. We'll take a look and go to data and strategy performance there. The Q model drawdown is from green dot straight down, but we just made another new equity high in this model. This is going back over 2 years. So this is the 2-year performance on the NASDAQ 100. All right, enough of that. I hope those answered the questions. Next, my comments have been that I don't think that the correction is over. This could be a correction that's going to take weeks, not hours or minutes or from one day to the next. And we've seen a lot of times where we get bear market rallies. Typically speaking, when the market is done in its corrective phase, we see the 10-day or the ATR decline. It hasn't declined. Positive momentum volume hasn't returned. Market's less oversold. So we could get a dead cat bounce, and in the interim, get some short-term trades. And that's what we did. I want to focus on a couple names today in China related names. Alibaba, earnings are out next week. I believe it's the 15th, next Thursday, a week from today. Earnings come out. But what's interesting is this double bottom pattern and what I was telling our traders today. So I'll give you fresh news. We wanted to be a buyer if we closed over a swing high. And we did, so buy a third of that position. Now, here's an interesting thing. Once again, I started off the week with sharing with you my game plan for this week in our weekly analysis. Was simply put, I am more prone to be a buyer on a deeper dip in select stocks. And these were the select stocks right here, near-term support. So Alibaba and did not come, well, it came close to the support zone there between 72 and 75 several times this week. Today, for example, was one. So if you look at today's low, Monday's low, we were right at 73.87, and subsequently we've been trading in that a rising higher low trend. and now today we made a higher high, higher closing high, and broke out. What was interesting about today is that it was a very heavy volume day, and I define heavy volume by the current day's volume greater than the last 10 days. And so there weren't a whole lot of stocks. Palantir had a big move. That was one that was big. Another trade that we're in that I like is Snowflake in data cloud storage. Had a high close doji. You may want to focus in on that one. I think you've got possibly a little bit more upside coming out of this one. It just absolutely got wrecked. And this is, I think, a very good value. I'll get back to Bob in just a second, but just the reason I stuttered and stopped onto Snowflake, because in my software, it's one of my first choices to be a buyer between 112, 115. And that was, by the way, we penetrated a little bit below that, but we've been at 115. Even today's low, by the way, was close to that, 117.35. So it's in the level that you can buy against on these supports in against those names. So, all right, let's get back to Alibaba. So let's go and take a look at Alibaba. Should be right here. 14 million shares today. It does on average in the last 10 days. In the last 10 days, let's face it, it has been pretty active. Today was new volume, 14 million shares versus 11. So first off, if Friday we close greater than last week's high, it's a nice tall benchmark, a rising three method candle pattern. These little pillars right here look like gold posts. You should be able to buy against the rising weekly moving average and define some risk. Now, as we get into next week with earnings, you have earnings risk, and we've seen a lot of really weird things on earnings reaction, so good and bad. Fastly was one that FSLY just absolutely, they gave poor guidance. I mean, that poor stock was down 15% today. It doesn't, I mean, that was a $20 stock at the beginning of the year or higher, so just to keep that in mind. So I'd like Alibaba. JD, I wouldn't really get as enthused about, but BIDU was another one. Baidu had some pretty decent volume, 3.2 million. So the theme is that we had, JD, I got it right over here, 5 million. It did less than its 10-day average. There's something about JD. I think they had to go in their secondary market and raise more capital. I'm not quite sure the whole story. But if you're going to buy a Chinese stock, PDD Holdings, they have Temu, which is, I guess, sales orientation products through Amazon and online. This one's going to form a weekly buy signal. That's a very strong buy signal on improving volume and the PMC relative strength improving. So China, there's something going on here, because even FXI today in the foreign ETFs, China had some really big, decent volume. Let's take a look and compare. 45 million shares today. This is nothing to sneeze at. Versus how does everyone feel about emerging markets? Only 32 million. So there was more potential buyers in China related than there were in the emerging markets. And in fact, if you take a gander at all of these, only I think Latin American ILF had, greater than its average 10-day volume. EWZ Brazil, which would be part of the Latin America fund component, that was more likely the reason that you saw those two ETFs go up. So I'm kind of a friendly fan to China. You may want to take a look at EWZ too. Nobody's really paying attention to those. It's not going to be on the news. They're talking about NVIDIA like me. They're talking about everything else. And I think for tomorrow we did get PDD. You did get a big move in China related. I'm not a big fan of buying breakouts yet, because I'm not, my work does not suggest a bottom is in, that we're back to like buy everything you can and with open arms. No. So you got to be a little bit selective, scale in a little bit. For smaller size account traders, it's going to be tough to buy options right now, because I don't know if there's enough as we bottom out and there's a process of bottoming, two-sided trading. Let's just double check something. Not to give a trading lesson every time we talk, but if you take a look at this, this is very choppy and chewy. So, you know, if you bought the breakout and the next week it came right back in your face, bought the breakout back in your face, and then it just kept going down and didn't give you a chance and then blew up, and probably you wouldn't have been with that trade. So it's not about price, it's about time and condition. This has now been a while that it's not really been in sync with the broad market, Alibaba that is. We saw a big sell-off this week and took out the prior month's lows on the SPY and the Qs relative to that. This did open lower, but didn't take out prior swing lows. So this is a better chart construction, let's say, and it does show there's better participation in volume. That's why I'm kind of a fan of Alibaba. And I don't know if I had enough time last night to give you PDD, but I'm giving it to you right now. Last night, I think I did talk a couple things that were on big volume downside. So let's take a look. LYFT, I said that might be capitulation. It was a huge volume, too big. And lift today was up 10% right back. Still in a downtrend. So as far as a bottom picker, until I get a trend of higher highs, higher lows, this was just a recovery off the low type of trade. RCL. I think I gave that one last night just to follow through. Yeah, it was up 2.5%, up $3. It's like, person, you moron. You said the market might go down. Yes, but not all in one day. And today it had heavy volume to the downside. Today it was up. But what's hard to reconcile is that if you're very bullish this stock, why didn't it even take out the prior day's low? So we have to wait till we clear falling moving averages and prices get to the upside of the moving averages, and the moving averages point higher. And that would be like, you know, when the moving averages cross and they start to move up, then you can start to buy dips and go with the trend of the price action with better condition, with volume increasing and improving in that trend direction. Oracle didn't do it. In fact, Google didn't do it. Google had an update, but still didn't close greater than a prior high. And that's not to say tomorrow we might not see some follow through. Apple, same story. It didn't close greater than a previous high. What we did see was Meta, which again didn't really go anywhere. It's stuck in a range. So when I can say I don't think the total market low is in, that doesn't mean we can't get a bear market, or not a bear market, but even more of a rally, and then look to see what happens on that rally. We need to get prices back in a weekly bullish bias, and I'll say it again, a weekly bullish bias right now. And I define a weekly bullish bias with the pivot point structure. In other words, we want to see if the market's going to bottom out, we want to see the pivot points give a higher high. So when we had this little downtrend, the person's pivots at the end of the Friday gave a higher red and a higher green. The prior weeks, when it was in a downtrend, was pointing towards bearishness. And then when we get the pivot mathematical formula that says something's changing, then we can go with now price is trading above moving averages. That's one observation or system. The next is the market trading north of a bullish mode of the weekly person's pivots? And that is found on most any platform, including Thinkorswim. So I'll just go, the last thing I'll talk about right now is let's just go and take a look at Alibaba. Funny thing about Alibaba, we closed greater than a little swing high a little bit, but look at Alibaba's interesting setup. Despite the fact that we opened lower and traded higher, it was person's pivots was giving a bullish bias. These lines, I don't draw in those dashed lines. This is drawn in by Thinkorswim, the back end of the program, based using my my formulas. So if you take a look and we'll go like change the expressions, hit apply and hit OK. For tomorrow, it's giving Alibaba another bullish bias to the upside. So if you get a chance, by the way, to fill the gap, and if by chance the market pulls back to like 78, fills that gap, as long as the market trades north of the pivots and we have a bullish bias, even the volume structure with on balance volume was more bullish. I think you can lightly scale in as or look for those types of setups, use the person's pivot indicator, use the PPS indicator. It's there for a reason. So here's the daily outlook, and already going into next week, and I'm going to change something here and we'll take a look at this together. So this is the weekly person's pivots right there with a daily chart. So for next week, it's defining a bullish bias. For next week, it's giving you already an inclination that the market is in a bullish structure. And that's what we would be watchful for. If it's bearish, and again, these are, I'm not going to say artificial intelligence. This has been around for decades. But in fact, I think we created person's pivots on Thinkorswim back in 2007. That's 14 years ago, guys, ladies and gentlemen. So if you think about it, if the market's bullish, pivots aren't going to give you a lower high, lower red, lower green, and give you that structure. They do so at the end of each time frame. But if you change the expressions like I just did, or the right hand expansion settings, giving you more time on the right side of the axis of your charts, you'll already see what the market is saying. If today was Friday, it's not, it's Thursday, and the market closed here on Friday or around here, if the assumption is the low is in and the high is in and that's the close, then the formula is already projecting that's what the condition is next week. It's projecting a higher high and a higher low mathematically. Now let's face facts. Higher highs and higher lows is not a bearish combination. It's a bullish combination, right? So what we want to look for is to make sure if the market is going to fulfill its destiny of being bullish, it at the very least maintains its structural support against the pivot. In the observation is, simply put, when bullish, markets trade north of pivots, and that's the end of the story. So watch Alibaba, and we'll take a look over the next course of the next couple days, and I'll be back with some video. Hope that explanation helped y'all, as well as what we do day in and day out. It's just another grind with the algos, and it's just something that these things happen in front of our traders live every single day with the algo room. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you on the next video update.